Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this, because today we are looking at something truly fascinating. Imagine, just for a second, being the single most powerful person on the face of the earth. You command endless armies. You literally run an empire. But with that ultimate power comes unimaginable stress. We're talking brutal wars, devastating diseases, constant political betrayal, and relentless crushing pressure. Now, you'd probably think a person in that position would leave behind a manual on military strategy, or maybe political manipulation, right? Well, Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who lived nearly 2,000 years ago, left us something way more valuable. He left us a guide to the human mind. So let's look at how the private thoughts of a tired, stressed-out emperor might actually hold the exact survival guide we need for our overwhelming modern world.
Now look at this. Most people suffer more in their imagination than in reality. What's really interesting about this quote is just the sheer absolute accuracy of it today. I mean, that perfectly diagnoses our modern anxiety, doesn't it? But here's the absolute craziest part. Marcus Aurelius never intended for you or me to read this, ever. The book we now call Meditations wasn't some grand public speech. It wasn't a published theory. It was his private, personal diary. These were desperate, completely honest reminders written by a highly stressed human being who was just trying to keep his feet on the ground. He was literally just trying to stay sane, exactly like the rest of us.
And this stark contrast perfectly illustrates his core strategy. Think about the split between the outside world and the internal mind. For Marcus, the outside world meant total chaos, invading armies, plagues, betrayal, the whole shebang. He knew with absolute certainty that he could not control those things. Even as an emperor, the world was just going to do what the world was going to do. So he made a pretty radical choice. He turned all of his focus inward, directly to his own mind. He dedicated his entire life to mastering his internal landscape. His goal? To be calm, grounded, controlled, and focused, no matter how incredibly loud the noise got on the outside.
Which brings us to this absolutely foundational lesson. You cannot control the outside world. You can only control your response to it. Think about how much of our daily exhaustion comes from simply fighting reality. You know the feeling. We desperately want people to behave differently than they do. We want our plans to work out perfectly. We constantly crave absolute certainty in a world that honestly never promises it. And when plans fail or people disappoint us, we suffer. But Marcus realized something profound. The suffering isn't actually caused by the event itself. The suffering is caused by our resistance to the event.
And that leads us to perhaps his most revolutionary thought of all. The obstacle is the way. Let that sink in for just a moment. Most of us go through life viewing unexpected problems as massive interruptions. We think, oh man, I was having such a great day and then this obstacle got in my way. But Marcus completely flipped this perspective on its head.
Think about the things we usually try to avoid at all costs. The difficult conversation, the rejection, the loneliness, the failure. We run from them, right? We just want them to go away. But Marcus saw them as the path itself. These moments aren't stopping your growth. They are the literal mechanism for your growth. You see, a calm, resilient mind isn't built when you're just sitting on a beach with no problems. It's forged during the hard moments. Every single frustration you face is just practice for patience. Every betrayal is practice for independence. The obstacle becomes the actual raw material you use to build your character.
But how do you actually build that character day to day? Well, Marcus warned himself about this constantly. Your mind takes the shape of what you repeatedly think about. And wow, think about how heavily this applies to our mental exhaustion today. Our modern environment is practically engineered to pull our attention toward negativity. News alerts, conflict, fear, you name it. If you feed your mind a steady diet of panic and outrage every single day, well, your mind is naturally going to take the exact shape of panic and outrage. Your thoughts turn into habits, and those habits literally construct who you are.
So how in the world do we break that cycle? Well, by using what I like to call the power pause. When anger or fear bubbles up, Marcus didn't just react. Step 1, he would pause first. Step 2, he would look clearly at what was actually happening. And then, step 3, only then would he choose his response. That brief, tiny pause is where your entire life changes. True self-awareness isn't about pretending to be perfect or somehow magically never getting angry. It's about watching your own mind honestly and utilizing that tiny gap between a feeling and a reaction to just step off the autopilot of your emotions.
And a massive part of that self-awareness involves dodging a very specific, very dangerous hazard, the ego trap. Marcus recognized that so much human unhappiness stems entirely from our own selfishness. We get trapped in these endless looping questions.
How do I look? Am I more successful than my peers? Why didn't I get credit for that project? We literally torture ourselves trying to manage our image in the minds of other people.
But his antidote to the ego trap was brutally honest. Human fame is small. People are quickly forgotten. Now, at first glance, that might sound, well, kind of depressing, right? But Marcus actually found this realization incredibly freeing. Because think about it. If everything is temporary and everyone is eventually going to be forgotten, then you can finally stop wasting all your precious energy trying to impress people. You're suddenly freed from the paralyzing fear of judgment. You don't have to be obsessed with status anymore. You can just finally live. And living means actually doing the work. Now, I absolutely love this next realization because it just shows how incredibly relatable he was. Even as the Emperor of Rome, Marcus struggled to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, he loved his warm blankets just as much as we do. But when he really wanted to hit the snooze button on life, he would hit himself with this thought instead: you were born to do the work of a human being. He used this to actively stop negotiating with his own comfort. It was simply time to get up and do the job he was put on earth to do. And this brings up a really stark contrast with how we tend to live today. Modern culture treats comfort as the absolute highest goal of human existence. Avoid discomfort, outsource your difficulties, completely avoid struggle. We hear it all the time. But Marcus believed that discipline matters far more than whatever your current mood is. True meaning doesn't come from being completely comfortable all the time. Meaning is built through taking on responsibility and facing what is necessary, even when you are totally, completely uninspired to do so. Now listen, if you take only one thing away from this whole explainer, let it be this single 2,000-year-old sentence, because it could legitimately cure our modern social media sickness overnight. How much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. Right now, we live under this heavy and visible pressure to constantly monitor what everyone else is doing and to make sure we appear just as successful and attractive to them. But the hard truth is, freedom begins when you stop performing for strangers. Marcus is reminding us that the more attention you give to the opinions of others, the more disconnected you become from your very own life. You simply cannot live a genuine life if you're constantly acting out a script written by the expectations of the crowd. True freedom is living according to your own honest values, quietly and confidently. And to keep those values in check, Marcus frequently used the lens of his own mortality. But he didn't think about death to scare himself. Not at all. He used it to grant himself ultimate clarity. You see, when you truly remember that your time is strictly limited, all that petty drama suddenly evaporates. You drop the small arguments. Instead, you start asking these really powerful questions. Am I living honestly? Am I becoming wiser? Am I actually treating people well? Or am I just wasting my life on meaningless distractions? Death, in a weird way, gives life its urgency. Which brings us right to the core thesis of his entire private diary. True strength is a calm mind in difficult moments. Peace does not mean avoiding pain. It definitely does not mean magically manifesting a perfectly smooth, problem-free life. It means doing the quiet, humbling, and, frankly, incredibly difficult work of mastering your own reactions, rather than exhaustively trying to control the uncontrollable world around you. And honestly, that is exactly why this is all still so unbelievably relevant today. Because right beneath our smartphones, our fast internet, and all our modern noise, look at what we are still battling every single day. Fear, anger, comparison, uncertainty. Human nature hasn't changed a bit. We're fighting the exact same internal battles that a Roman emperor fought 2 millennia ago. And that makes his private, totally honest words the absolute perfect survival guide for us today. So, the crucial point I want you to take away from all of this is simple. You may not control what happens around you, but you can always control the meaning you give to it. A failure can mean you're worthless, or it can mean you're learning. An obstacle can be a tragic roadblock, or it can be the path itself. Choosing the meaning you assign to events is your ultimate superpower, and it changes absolutely everything. We've definitely covered a lot of ground today, looking at how to protect our peace in a chaotic world using tools developed literally 2 millennia ago. But now I want to turn it over to you. Looking at your own life, your daily routines, and just the endless noise of modern society, what do you think is the hardest part of staying calm in today's world? Take a moment to reflect on that and see if maybe you can apply a little bit of the Emperor's wisdom to it tomorrow morning. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.